Hey everyone, so we are going to work on the pinwheel blocks today, but I want you to pay close attention. Hey everyone, Cristin here, and we are continuing with our We Whisk You a Merry Christmas quilt. We're getting really far along on it. So we have all 4 rows of the blocks done, and we have the sashings and inner borders done, and we have various personalizations throughout the project. So it has been such a fun one. So we are going to work on the corner blocks today. Before we can do the outer borders, we need our corner blocks. But I want you to pay close attention today because there are some key points. Hopefully you saw the prep video, the very first video in this project series, and saw that we are going to do the pinwheels a little bit differently. So again, your quilt, your way, however you want to do it. But if you want to quilt them and you want your borders to be the way that we usually do them, then we're going to have to do a little bit of changes, all right? Because remember that this quilt was done before from Kimberbell. It was done before Kimberbell came out with their quilting designs. So that we're going to make some changes. And again, if it works for you, if it doesn't, do it how it says in the book. That's fine. All right, so we're going to work on the pinwheel blocks. They are on page 16 of our Whisk book. And let's go ahead and talk about the project supplies that we need. So I want to tell you, I did one of the pinwheel blocks right from the start. Like I think before we even did the prep video, I did one of the pinwheel blocks just to test it. Because here's the problem. I noticed in the very beginning when we started this project that it has the pinwheel blocks at 4 inches. So it says in the directions to cut the pinwheel block down to 4 by 4. So I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending that we cut it to 4.5 by 4.5, and same with our outer borders. And I did mention this in the prep video so that you could be prepared before when you're cutting your fabrics, when you're getting ready. So we're going to have the same issue when it comes to the outer borders. And the reason is because they didn't quilt it. So the way that Kimberbell did it before they had their quilting designs, they would send it to a long arm quilter. So what they did is they had their outer borders at 4 by 4, and it wasn't quilted, and it didn't have the seam allowance and all of that. When it was done, they sent it to a long arm quilter. And you can, I'll talk about that with the outer borders as well, just like I talked about with the inner borders. You can do it with the directions that's in the book. You can absolutely have the quilting design run off onto the stabilizer, whatever works. But if you have enough fabric and you have watched the prep video and prepared in advance, then you should be able to cut your outer borders and your pinwheel blocks to 4.5 inches, and that will give us our seam allowance. It will give us our 4-inch quilting, which is the size that comes from Kimberbell. So it will work out if you have enough fabric, if you prepared for it that way. If not, then there's alternatives. Don't worry at all. All right, so we'll talk about the outer borders tomorrow, but for today we're going to work on the pinwheel blocks, and we need our pinwheel blocks to go along with our outer borders, and that's why we want them to be 4.5 inches. All right. So our final cut size is going to be 4.5 by 4.5. And like I said, if you don't have enough fabric for your outer borders to be 4.5 inches, and you want your outer borders and your pinwheel blocks to be 4 inches, by all means do that. That's fine. Totally fine. All right. And we'll talk about options. All right. So for the pinwheel blocks, so like I said, I already did one. I did not quilt it. I haven't added the batting and done the quilting. I just put together the pinwheel block so that I could make sure that with the fabrics that are in the directions, it's going to work. And it did. It worked. This is a 4.5 inch block. So it does work. Keep in mind though, I do stabilize my fabrics. And that is one thing, is if you're stabilizing your fabrics, it's not pulling in as much. And so I don't know if that's why it ended up working for me, but that is one thing I should point out just in case. But the block did end up being 4.5 by 4.5 with the fabrics that are in the directions. So it did work out for me. All right, so if you made packets, grab your pinwheel packet, and we'll talk about the fabrics that are needed for today. So we have pinwheel A, which is the white fabric, and then we have pinwheel B, which is the red fabric. All right, and we'll just go over each of those separately. So on Pinwheel A, it is the snowflakes. Yep, snowflakes. So let me see if I can get it where you can see it. There we go. All right, so the pinwheel blocks the white. So this is for Pinwheel A. It is the white on white snowflake. And I did back mine with fusible stabilizer. That's up to you. But it also does help it to be able to see the front from the back if you cut your stabilizer in a little bit, or you can use that black light flashlight that I've been telling you about that's in my Amazon storefront that you can do. This one worked out perfectly. Look at, I don't know if you can see it. It's got the snowflake right there. It is right. The whole block is the snowflake. That's pretty fun. That one worked out really well. All right. So on these, we're going to have 8 pieces of the white Pinwheel A fabric. 8 pieces that are 3.5 by 3.5. You did not have to end up cutting them bigger, and that's why I made one just to be sure. I was like, oh, I bet you we're going to need these fabrics to be bigger, and we didn't. It worked out. So it should work out great on your end, and again, if it doesn't, we'll adjust. All right, so 8 pieces that are 3.5 by 3.5. I did back mine with fusible stabilizer, but that's optional. 8 pieces, 3.5 by 3.5 for the A, Pinwheel A fabric. And then the Pinwheel B fabric is the red and black plaid with white lines on it. All right. And again, I backed mine with fusible stabilizer. That's up to you. It does help it to not pull in from the stitching though. And we want to use every bit of it because we want it bigger than what they expected it to be. And if I recall, I don't recall exactly, but I think I did end up cutting mine down to 4.5. So I think we had enough, but I've got some notes on it. But anyway, so on this one, this is Pinwheel B. It's the red fabric, and we want 8 pieces, same thing, 3.5 by 3.5. 8 pieces, 3.5 by 3.5 for the Pinwheel B fabric. All right. And then we have our batting. So just a couple of notes that I did write down when I was working on that one to check it. Let's finish going over our stuff. So for our batting, we're going to have 4 pieces of batting that are 5 by 5. 4 pieces batting 5 by 5. All right. And we are going to make our pinwheel blocks first. We're going to make the entire pinwheel block, and then we will quilt it. So I will show you all of that in photos when we get there, but 4 pieces of batting that are 5 by 5. All right. And then we have our quilting. So any quilting that you want that is 4 by 4, any quilting design 4 by 4. I'm going to use Christmas 2. I think that's the one that's got gingerbread and candy canes, maybe different things on it. I don't recall off the top of my head, but Christmas 2 is the one I'm going to use. I think that's what I used on the gingerbread. Oh, that was Christmas 1, so I'm wrong. So Christmas 2, it has candy canes on it and probably peppermints and stuff. And I have Christmas 2 for my pinwheel blocks. But again, you can use any quilting design that is a 4 by 4 design. All right, and then a couple of notes. So I'll go over this part when we get to it in photos, don't worry. But on step number 6 on page 16, it says square each block to 2.5 by 2.5. That's after we put the red and the white together and we do all the things. And I will go over all of that in photos. But the last part, when we finish that first block, it says just square it to 2.5 by 2.5. Don't cut it, okay? That's what helped it to make it fit for our larger, because we want our pinwheel blocks larger. So don't cut that down, just leave it as it is. So that is on number 6. It's highlighted in yellow in our book on page 16. Yeah, 16. So right here, down at the bottom, it says to square each block to 2.5 by 2.5. So don't do that, and I'll tell you again when we get there. Let's see, what else do I have? The fabrics did work out, and batting, we'll trim it before we get there. Before it's done, I'll show you when we get there. And then when we're complete, so we're gonna put those blocks. They're supposed to be 2.5 by 2.5 each of these, and ours will be bigger, and we want them bigger, so that's fine. We'll put those all together, and then we'll sew those together, and then that's where it says now square up the block to 4 by 4, and we want to square it to 4.5 by 4.5. Very important. 4.5 by 4.5, so that we have a 4-inch block with our seam allowance. All right, and again, I'll tell you when we get there, so don't worry. And again, if you if you don't have enough outer border fabric, so that's going to be the key, is if you watched the prep video and you prepared and you've got your outer borders at 4.5 inches instead of 4 inches, then we should be fine with doing the pinwheels. If your outer border fabric, you didn't have enough, which is absolutely possible, because in the directions, the sponsors and the quilt shops, they're going to cut them by the directions that are in the book. And so in the book, it had these at 4 inches, and we want them to be 4.5 times with the fabric. So let me just confirm here. So it was, they gave us a 1/2 yard of fabric for our outer borders, and that's why it would be tight. I think I did order a 1/2 yard. And so that's the interesting thing, is I did have a 1/2 yard of fabric, just like it says in the directions, and I was able to get 4.5 inches. I think, let me see, 4.5. Yeah, I don't have any notes on that, so it worked out. But so check your fabric. If it's close, then that will be fine, because any excess is going to run off onto the stabilizer anyway, on the sides or anything. It will work out totally fine, especially because we're going to add that batting onto our border strips. So you're not going to have batting in your seams that would be really hard to cut around if it's going into the stabilizer. So anyway, oops, I'm putting it in the wrong packet. So on your outer borders, check your outer borders. If you've got enough to do 4.5 inches, then you definitely want your pinwheel blocks to be 4.5 inches. But you can just put that off and not worry too much. You can get them to 4.5 right now, and then when we work on the outer borders tomorrow, we can go over what will work, and you can cut down your pinwheel blocks if needed at that point. So either way, we're going to make our pinwheel blocks. It's all sewing. We're sewing them all together, and then we will quilt them. And I'm going to bring you over to the computer and show you how to quilt 3 in a hoop. I'll do 4 in a hoop for you. But well, actually, I do need to quilt my 4th one. I forgot about that. I didn't already quilt it. So I will show you how to quilt 4 in 1 hooping if you choose. So it should be a pretty easy day as far as the embroidery quilting part, the sewing part. Pinwheels are not my favorite. I'll tell you, I find them difficult. And at one point, I remember Kimberbell said that they were going to do pinwheel blocks in the hoop so that we could just not have to get them so perfectly straight. And I never saw that come through. So I don't, if you have one that's from Kimberbell, that's a pinwheel embroidered block, let me know. I'm curious, because I own pretty much all of the Kimberbell designs. So maybe I just missed it. But for now, it's got us sewing the pieces together, and I will show you all of that step by step. We'll go through all of it, and we're not going to go for perfect pinwheels. The key is always to try and get your points together. That's the biggest thing. But I mean, look, it's not totally perfect. And if it's, I'll give you some tips, by the way. I have some good tips on how to try and get it pretty close to perfect, but just don't go for perfection. It's okay. We're going to do our best, and we're going to have fun with the process. Hey everyone, I'm at my computer now, and I'm going to quickly show you how to merge 4 of the quilting designs together for each of our pinwheel blocks. So I'm going to open up Embellishment Essentials, and it opens up to my 7x12 hoop. That's what I used yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. I think 4.5, so 9. So I think I'm going to use my 10x10 hoop. If you have a 9x9 as your biggest, you should be able to still make it work. You'll probably have a little overlap of your fabrics. An 8x12, you could do 2. You should be able to do 2 in one hooping. Do 2 of those hoopings. Either way, whatever will work for you and your hooping. So I'm going to go to the preferences folder, and I'm going to choose my 10x10 hoop. Let's see, it's down here. I added it manually. Say okay, and then H to zoom into the hoop from this compass button. All right, so you can see down here at the bottom, I'm on my 10x10 hoop, and I think that's what will work the best for me, but let's just see as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a folder. I show you how to do the merge stitch file often, so I'm going to do it this way, where I just have a folder open and I drag it over. So one thing is, I'm supposed to do Christmas too. That's what I wrote in my notes a long time ago. And that is, let me show you that. That's really cute. Christmas 2. embroidery, block by block, Pez, and we want the 4x4. So notice that all of the designs show up. I have that, what is it, thumbnailer program. It works really well to show all of the designs. So this is the Christmas 2 design that I said that I was going to use, and that is super cute, but I think I'm leaning toward, I think it was a mistake, and I was thinking that the one that has the gingerbread on it would be really cute, and that is Christmas 1, not Christmas 2, so I think I'm going to change my mind. Let me take a look here, and don't forget, I told you you can use any quilting design that you want that is a 4x4 design. So here's the 4x4 of Christmas 1. And see, that's really cute too. Any of them will be really cute, and really, you're going to see it. You're going to see all of the quilting on this pinwheel. So you do want something that you'll like. So I think I'm going to do this Christmas 1 instead of Christmas 2. I'm going to change my mind on that. So I'm going to click on this first one and click delete. So you saw how to bring it over. I just opened up a folder, and then in my thumbnailer program, it shows me all of the designs that go with my machine. And then I just clicked it and dragged it over. That's how easy it is to get it onto your workspace using Embrilliance Essentials. All right, so I'm going to take it and I'm just going to click on it, click on the stitching, and drag it over to the left-hand corner. Now we've got those default blues and oranges that will join together if we don't change the color. So I want to make sure to change those. So I'm going to click on 1, 1. Notice I clicked outside so nothing was selected, and then I clicked on 1, 1, and then click on the color. I'm going to change it to the first color that comes up for me, which is dark aqua. And then 1, 2, click on the color. The first color that comes up for me is Blaze. I'm just doing it easy, the first color that comes up. Then 1, 3, click on the color. We already used dark aqua, so I'm going to use the next one down for me is Marine. And then 1, 4, click on the color, and I want the second color down, which for me is Oriole. And then 1, 5, I'm going to click on the color, and I'm going to choose Sprout. And you really don't need to choose each of those. Like, really the only things that you would have to change is 3 and 4 or 1 and 2, either of the ones that would join together. But it's so easy. I often just do all of them because if there's something that you're going to bring in later, but that's all we're bringing in today is this quilting design. Quick and easy today. All right, so there's our first one. I'm going to go ahead and click on that design, the whole design, and I'm going to say Control-C to copy it on my keyboard, Control-C, and then Control-V like victory to paste it. And I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard. There was some confusion yesterday. What arrow keys? Thinking that I was talking about Embrilliance. It's on my keyboard. You can use your mouse and move it over, or you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move it over. It doesn't matter in the slightest, especially on something like this that we don't need lined up just right. All right, so there's the second one. Now I'm going to click Control-V like victory for a third design, and I'm just going to click on the stitching and bring it down. All right. And then Control-V like victory to get a fourth one, because it's already, once you copy it, it's already there until you copy something else. And so that's why all we have to do is hit Control-V to paste it. All right, so I have all 4 of mine, and you can see I have plenty of room in between. That's why I was saying if you have a 9x9 hoop, which is actually 9.5 by 9.5, you'll have enough room. There will be a little bit, your fabrics will be closer together, but it's not a problem. All right, so there are our 4 designs. We have 20 color steps right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a utility color sort. And it's reduced it by 15 color changes. I'm going to click New View. Now, one thing I want to point out is don't forget that you have to have these lined up where you want them before you do a color sort, all right? And you want to have these same settings that I have with the force applique not chosen and tolerance at 0. So New View will open a new tab. I'm going to look through those real quick. There's our placement for our batting, our tack down for our batting, our placement for our main fabric, which will be that pinwheel block, and then the tack down of the pinwheel block, which it probably won't actually catch. It might catch a little bit, but not sure. We're probably going to want to tape these in place. All right, and then we have our quilting design. Super cute, and that was so easy. So I'm going to do a file, save stitch file as, and I'm going to name this 10 by 10. I'm on my 10 by 10, and Pinwheel times 4. That's what I'm naming mine. save, and I don't have my machine on yet, so I can't send it to it. You can either, if your machine is on and you have a Wi-Fi ready machine, you can send it to your machine, or if you don't have that option, you would just save it to a USB stick or save it on your hard drive like I just did, and then transfer it to your USB stick to copy it. And I have an entire tutorial on how to do that. If you have any questions, just look on Cristin Creates on YouTube. All right, let's go ahead and get started stitching these. First, we have to stitch them all together into the pinwheel blocks, and then we can quilt them. All right. Hey everyone, so a couple of things. First, I want to apologize for the delay in getting this video out. It took me a while. I think it took me like 2.5 days to complete the pinwheel blocks, and of course then to edit the video and all the photos and all of that. But I just want to point out the pinwheel blocks are not easy, all right? So give yourself grace, okay? So I'm going to give you a little tidbit of information. So I finished mine. I'm going to show you how to do it in just a minute, but I finished mine, and some of them I'm like, this one is great. I'm quite proud of this one. This one's not too bad. This one's not great. This one is pretty bad. So just give yourself grace on these. Enjoy the process. I love pinwheel blocks because they are tradition, but they're hard. They're not my favorite thing to do at all, but they're a fun part of the process. So I just want to read you a little something that I happened to read this morning, and it spoke to me. So I want to share this. I aim for perfection, but I settle for excellence. Aim for perfection. This is very different from perfectionism. Perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by striving for flawlessness. It leads to setting excessively high performance standards. Perfectionists are overly critical of themselves and constantly concerned about what others think of them. It leads to a fear of failure and making mistakes. It can lead to depression, anxiety, and missed opportunities. We are called to aim high while avoiding the dangers of perfectionism. So while you're working on these pinwheel blocks, just know that they are not the easiest thing. Some things are easy for other people, like I love perfectly pieced, and some people find those really difficult. So, whatever your strive is, whatever it is that all of us have things that we do well and things that we struggle with. So just give yourself grace while you're working on these. Don't strive for perfectionism. Strive for aiming high, right? We want it to look good. We want to be happy with what we did. But one of these blocks I redid 3 times. Oh my gosh, to the point that I even recut the fabric on that last one and redid the whole process. So just know that these aren't the easiest thing, and just do your best. That's all that matters. We want to aim for perfection, but settle for excellence. All right. And how are you doing with your goal? So yesterday, it was a work day, but I pretty much took like the afternoon off, and I insisted that hubby and I go for a hike. And it's funny, he's retired. He doesn't mind. He's like, yeah, whatever. But I've been working on these tutorials and I work pretty hard on them. But so I insisted that we take yesterday off, the afternoon off, because we're going to have like 6 days of really bad weather. It's like 45-mile-an-hour winds today. We're even supposed to get snow. Idaho. Anyway, so it's supposed to be really bad weather for 6 days. So I figured while we have sunshine, we need to take advantage of that. It's really important to get out and get sunshine, get vitamin D, get movement. So I planned a hike for us, and we went to a hiking place that we had never seen before. I read it in a book, and so I found this place. And it was really nice. I really enjoyed it. There was almost nobody there. Like, I think we saw 2 mountain bikers and 2 hikers, and that was it. And the whole rest of the day was just me and him enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the activity and climbing. And it was just really, really good. I'm so glad we went. We ended with just under 4 miles of hiking and 756 feet of climbing, I think it was. So it was a good climb. And it wasn't like Table Rock where it's like monster climb and your heart rate's going insane. It was very gradual, and it just was like climbing the whole time. So it was really enjoyable. I super enjoyed it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So I wrote a little note in my book. We really liked this one, so we can do that one again. I bought this book of Boise hiking trails. And so we're going to try and go through the whole book and see all the different places to hike. So I think that'll be fun. And I'm super thankful that we got out yesterday. It was a really nice day. It was a little bit colder than I would have liked, but it's going to be really icky for 6 days. So it's good to get out when you can. So I'm glad that we made that work. What did you do for your goal? Whatever that goal is, I'd love to hear about it. And my shirt today, this is one of my favorites. I really like this one. It says, my favorite color is sparkle. Isn't that fun? I think this is such a fun one. And I used vinyl on each of the letters and put colored bling that matches the vinyl around each letter. I think it's really fun. This design was from Bows and Clothes. And they've got it on their website. I will add a link underneath the video. It's a really fun design, just a fun one. And in fact, I've shown this before, and a ton of people have actually made it and embroidered this same design. And it's just a really fun one. I really like it. The shirt is an old one from Fred Meyer. My husband's waving to me at the window while I'm filming. Oh, he's so cute. So the sweatshirt is from Amazon, or not from Amazon, sorry, it's from Fred Meyer, and I love it. It's lavender. It's a really good shirt, and I wish I could find a match for you on Amazon because I really like this one, but I haven't. Lavender shirts are hard to find for some reason. I don't know why, because I really like lavender. I even bought some lavender earrings, but they're not very lavender. But anyway, fun stuff. So I will include underneath this video where you can get the design from Bows and Clothes.